Some betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people who used to tuck you in at night, laugh with you in family photos, and call you by your childhood nickname. And then one day, without warning, they show you exactly where you stand. And sometimes that betrayal doesn't come in the form of harsh words. It comes in the form of a ring. Welcome to Judgy Tales, where real stories meet real drama, and justice always comes with a twist. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, if you've ever swallowed your pain in silence while others rewrote your place in the story, this is the channel for you. We listen, we judge, and we speak the uncomfortable truth. Today's story starts with a promise. A grandmother's heirloom ring, passed down through generations, worn through decades of love, loss, and resilience. It wasn't just jewelry. It was a symbol. And our storyteller, she was always told it would be hers. Not in passing. Not implied. It was direct. Someday, Grandma said, this will belong to you. She wasn't the loud one. She wasn't the favorite. But she was close to her grandmother in ways no one else was. While the rest of the family brushed off Grandma as a sweet old lady, she saw her. She listened. She cared. She was there. Not out of obligation but out of genuine love. When things got tense at home, when her younger sister's drama took up all the space, Grandma was her quiet anchor, her safe place. And then, Grandma passed. There was mourning. There were condolences. But then came the silence. No mention of the ring. No discussion. No honoring of the promise that had been made for years. She waited. Maybe they were planning something. Maybe they would do it right. Maybe, just maybe, they remembered. But then came the dinner. Typical family gathering. Steak on the grill. Cheap red wine. Laughter that didn't quite reach her. And in walks her younger sister, proudly holding out her hand, wearing the ring. Her ring. Not a word was said. Not a glance in her direction. And when she finally spoke up, quietly, carefully, trying not to fall apart, "Why is she wearing Grandma's ring?" Her mother looked her dead in the eye and said, "Because she actually cares about this family." You never really did. Let that sink in. Everything she'd done, visiting Grandma weekly, managing her medications, holding her hand during those final appointments, meant nothing. Years of love, time, and emotional labor, completely erased. They didn't just give away the ring. They handed her the coldest message imaginable. You don't belong here. And no, this story isn't just about a ring. It's about favoritism, rewriting history, gaslighting someone into believing their love wasn't enough because it didn't come with noise or drama. It's about how families elevate the loudest and overlook the steady, the quiet, the reliable. But here's the twist, and you knew there'd be one. Our storyteller doesn't crumble. She doesn't scream or beg. What she does next, it will catch everyone off guard. It's silent, calculated, and oh, it's deliciously satisfying. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in the form of a big confrontation. Sometimes it comes in the form of walking away, calm, clear-eyed, and unbothered, and leaving everyone else to deal with the fallout. If you've ever been the overlooked sibling, the scapegoat, the too independent one in a family that praises only performance and compliance, you're going to feel this story deep in your bones. At Judgy Tales, we don't just share stories. We expose patterns. We peel back the curtain on family dynamics people are too scared to talk about. Because love shouldn't come with conditions. And legacies shouldn't be rewritten out of convenience. So here's your moment. Ear listen. Balance scale judge. Beach balloon and tell us what you would have done. Because this isn't just her story. This is the story of anyone who's been left out of a will. Not for what they did, but for who they refused to become. And trust us. What happens next? You'll want to hear every word. I grew up in a house where loyalty was always a one-way street. From the outside, my family might have looked close-knit. Big Thanksgiving dinners, coordinated holiday cards, staged birthday parties with matching outfits. But behind all of that was a very different reality. Favoritism, emotional manipulation, and a family culture where the loudest voice always won, and the quiet ones got erased. My name is Anna. I'm the eldest daughter of a very image-conscious, emotionally dysfunctional family. And this is the story of how my younger sister ended up with my grandmother's heirloom ring. My ring. And how my entire family gaslit me into believing I somehow didn't deserve it. But before we get to the betrayal, let me walk you through the family dynamic. Because this story, it didn't start with a piece of jewelry. It started the moment I was born. My parents had 2 daughters, me and my younger sister, Emily. We're 3 years apart, but we might as well have been born on different planets. I was the mature one, the easy child, the one who didn't cry too much, didn't ask for much, and learned early on how to make myself small in order to keep the peace. Emily was the opposite. Loud, attention-seeking, theatrical. She was the baby, the one with the tantrums, the one who could do no wrong. And my parents, they leaned hard into that narrative. If Emily forgot to do her chores, it was, "Oh, she's just distracted." If I forgot, it was, "You're older, you should know better." If Emily screamed at our mom, it was, "She's just sensitive." If I pushed back even gently, I was disrespectful and cold. That contrast followed us everywhere. School events, family gatherings, church. My mom always introduced Emily with glowing pride. "She's the dancer, the performer, the sunshine of our home." And me with a flat, obligatory nod. "Anna's the quiet one. Not smart, not kind, not accomplished. Just fit. Placeholder." But there was one person who saw me. One person who didn't buy into the golden child narrative. My grandmother. Grandma Ruth was my dad's mother. And she was old school in the best way. Strong, no nonsense, but incredibly warm. She had raised 3 boys through poverty and loss, and by the time I was born, she had a deep appreciation for stillness, for people who didn't need to take up all the air in the room just to feel seen. From the time I was 6, I spent almost every weekend at her house. She'd teach me how to bake apple pie from scratch, show me old photos from the 1940s, tell me stories about how she met Grandpa at a USO dance during World War II. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world who mattered in that moment. With her, I wasn't the quiet one. I was Anna, and that meant something. One day when I was around 12, I was helping her sort through some of her old jewelry when she pulled out this stunning vintage ring. Delicate gold band, a deep blue sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. It was breathtaking. She slipped it onto my finger and said, "This ring has been passed down from woman to woman in our family. And one day when I'm gone, I want you to have it." I was floored. I'd never felt so seen. I asked her why she wanted me to have it and not Emily. She just smiled and said, "Because you'll understand its worth. Not just the dollar value but the meaning behind it. You're the heart of this family, even if no one else sees it yet." I never forgot those words. Over the years, she repeated that promise more than once. Every birthday, every holiday, she'd take a moment to hold my hand and remind me, "The ring will be yours, sweetheart. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're invisible. I see you." Clung to that. It became this quiet assurance that someone in my family actually got me. Someone valued me not for being loud or flashy, but for being real. As we got older, Emily and I only grew further apart. She went off to college, got into some toxic relationships, dropped out, came back home, and became the emotional hurricane of the house. Every crisis was hers. Every ounce of attention funneled in her direction. Meanwhile, I got my degree, found a steady job in healthcare, paid my bills, and became, in my mother's words, so independent it's like you don't even need a family. That's how independence is treated in my house. As betrayal. When Grandma Ruth got sick, it wasn't a long illness. A few months of appointments, some hospital visits, then hospice. And I was there for all of it. My parents were busy, Emily was too emotionally overwhelmed. But I was there. I scheduled appointments. I made sure her prescriptions were filled. I sat with her when she was too tired to talk, just held her hand while she slept. I fed her soup when she couldn't lift a spoon. I watched her slowly fade day by day, in the same house where she once taught me how to make pie crust from scratch. In her final week, she was barely speaking, but she pulled me close and whispered, "Don't let them take the ring from you. I told her not to worry. That I wouldn't. She passed 3 days later. After the funeral, things moved fast. My parents were weirdly distant, and Emily was suddenly more involved, helping with the house, sorting through things, playing the role of the grieving granddaughter after years of absence. And the ring. It was nowhere to be seen. He asked once. Just once. My mom brushed it off with a vague, "We'll get to the jewelry later." My dad didn't even look up from his phone. Weeks passed. Nothing. Then came the dinner. Casual Sunday get-together. Nothing fancy. Just family. And Emily walks in, smiling like she just won the lottery, wearing the ring. My ring. She held it out like it was just a cute accessory she stumbled upon. And everyone, my parents, aunts, cousins, gushed. "It's so beautiful. It suits you perfectly. Grandma would love that you're wearing it." And I just sat there stunned, trying to keep my voice steady as I asked, "Where did you get that?" Emily blinked like it was no big deal and said, "Oh, Mom gave it to me. Said Grandma would have wanted me to have it." I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say something, anything that would make sense of this. But all she said was, "Well, Emily's the one who's always been there for the family. You've always kept your distance." That was the moment everything cracked. Not just the betrayal, but the years of being overlooked, dismissed, devalued. All wrapped into one sentence that tried to rewrite my entire reality. Because this wasn't about a ring. It was about erasing me from the family's story, editing out the daughter who showed up quietly, consistently, and lovingly, in favor of the one who always made noise. But if they thought I was going to stay quiet this time, they were wrong. I didn't react right away. When Emily flashed Grandma's ring in front of me like it was a charm she earned, and my mother made that cold, dismissive comment, "You've always kept your distance," I just sat there. Son. Betrayal doesn't always come in like a storm. Sometimes it arrives as a whisper in a room full of smiles. And that night I felt like the only person who could hear it. There was a long pause after my mother said it. No one else at the table flinched. Not my dad. Not my aunt. Not even my cousin Mark, who once told me in college that he respected how I always did the right thing for Grandma. Not a single person blinked as I sat there, hands trembling under the table, watching my sister sip her wine like she hadn't just stolen a part of me. But it didn't stop there. Because when I finally found the words to speak, calmly I said, "Grandma promised that ring to me. Multiple times. In private and in front of people. She made it very clear." Emily rolled her eyes. "You're seriously doing this now?" And before I could even respond, my dad chimed in with a sigh. "Not everything has to be about promises. It's about who shows up for the family. And lately that's been Emily." I laughed. Not a real laugh. More like a sharp exhale, a broken sound of disbelief. "Are you serious? I was there every single day for Grandma when she was dying. I scheduled her chemo. I cleaned her kitchen. I held her hand while she cried because she was terrified of what was happening to her. Where were you? Where was Emily? Too busy. Too emotional. Too what?" The room went silent. For 1 second I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd get through to them. But then my mother said it. "Oh honey, that wasn't love. That was duty. And you've always treated family like a job." That sentence changed something in me. It wasn't just a slap in the face. It was a full-blown rewriting of history. A denial of every selfless thing I had done. Not because I was obligated, but because I loved my grandmother more than anyone else in that room ever bothered to. It was that exact moment I realized. This wasn't just about the ring. This wasn't even about Grandma. This was about control. About perception. About the story my family had decided to tell themselves, and everyone else about who I was. Emily was the heart. I was the cold one. Emily was emotionally available. I was calculated. Emily cried loudly. I loved quietly. And in this family, quiet love never counted. And they didn't just believe it. They needed it to be true. Because if they admitted the truth, that I was the one Grandma chose, trusted and confided in, then they'd have to face what they'd ignored for years, that their golden child wasn't golden at all. After that dinner, things spiraled fast. I tried to follow up with my mother privately a few days later. I drove over to her house and asked to talk, hoping that without an audience, she'd be more rational, more honest. She wasn't. I told her everything. How hurt I felt. How Grandma's promise wasn't just about a ring, but about legacy and acknowledgement. About being seen in a family that had always pushed me to the margins. I even reminded her of the exact moment, 2 months before Grandma died, when Grandma had told both of us, right there in her kitchen, that the ring would go to me. My mother looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I remember. But you misunderstood. She didn't mean that ring." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She literally took it out of the box, put it on my hand and said, "One day this will be yours." What exactly did I misunderstand? She was old, my mom said, shrugging. People say things. They forget things. She probably said the same to Emily years ago. Well, she didn't. I know she didn't. Grandma wasn't confused. She wasn't fading when she made those promises. She was crystal clear. But the more I pushed, the more my mother deflected, until she finally said something that would replay in my head for weeks. "You've always acted like you're above this family. Like you're better than us. So don't act surprised when people stop treating you like you belong." That was it. That was the core. That was the narrative they'd been telling themselves for years, that I wasn't one of them because I didn't scream, didn't guilt trip, didn't manipulate. I didn't need them the way Emily did. And to them that meant I was cold. Not calm. Not balanced. Not independent. Just cold. But let me be very clear. I wasn't cold. I was just tired. Tired of performing for people who never looked up. Tired of being expected to absorb everyone else's chaos while never expressing my own needs. Tired of showing up quietly, consistently, and watching someone else get applauded just for walking through the door. That ring was never about money. It wasn't even about jewelry. It was a promise. Symbol. A rare, sacred moment where someone in this family told me, "You matter. I see you." And they took it. Not because Emily wanted the ring, but because they couldn't stand the idea of me having something that couldn't be denied. They could ignore my loyalty. They could dismiss my memories. But that ring, that was real, tangible, proof. And they erased it the only way they knew how, by pretending the promise never happened. After that conversation, I stopped calling. I stopped texting. I didn't show up for Sunday dinners. I skipped Easter. I didn't send a birthday card. I went quiet, not out of spite but self-preservation. Because sometimes the only way to survive in a family like mine is to stop playing the game altogether. But even silence wasn't enough for them. I started getting messages. First from Emily. "You're really going to ruin the family over a ring? Seriously?" Then from my aunt. "Whatever happened to being the mature one? You used to be so grounded." Then from my cousin Mark. "I don't want to take sides, but this is all getting a little dramatic, don't you think?" Well, what's dramatic is stealing from someone while they're grieving and calling them the problem when they react. What's dramatic is rewriting history to protect the narrative that the golden child always gets her way. What's dramatic is pretending loyalty doesn't matter unless it comes with tears and noise. And through all of it, no one apologized. No one even acknowledged what they'd done. Because to acknowledge it would mean confronting the fact that they're not the people they like to pretend to be. And that's a truth they're not ready for. The more I pulled away, the more they leaned into the guilt tactics. The emotional boomerangs. The group chats filled with family updates they knew I wouldn't respond to. The carefully curated photos on Facebook, always featuring Emily front and center, proudly wearing the ring, like it was her birthright. But here's the part they didn't see coming. I wasn't just grieving the loss of a ring. I was grieving the illusion. The hope that one day they'd finally see me the way Grandma did. That they'd choose fairness over favoritism. Truth over comfort. But illusions die hard. And when they do, it's messy. But also liberating. Because once I saw them clearly, I started to see myself clearly too. And for the first time I realized, I don't need their validation. I never did. And maybe, just maybe, the real heirloom grandma left me wasn't a piece of jewelry. It was the quiet strength to walk away. I wish I could say that was the end of it. That I walked away from the family dinner, took some time to heal, and slowly rebuilt myself in peace. But life doesn't always give you clean exits, especially not when you're dealing with people who are addicted to control, performance, and a curated version of the truth. What happened next? That was the real twist. The kind you don't see coming, even when all the signs are there. The kind that doesn't just shatter your trust, but makes you question whether anything in your life was ever real to begin with. It started 2 weeks after that dinner. I was still licking my wounds in silence. Still skipping family texts, ignoring passive-aggressive posts on social media, and just trying to create distance. I was exhausted from defending my own memories. From watching the people I grew up with rewrite our history like they were authoring a new script for a sitcom family where I was the emotionless extra. But something about Emily's smugness that night. It never left me. The way she wore that ring, the ease with which she lied, the way my mom played along, it haunted me. And I kept thinking, why? Why go to such lengths to deny what Grandma clearly said? Why not just admit the truth and say, yeah, we gave it to Emily because we like her more? But then, the answer came. And it came through Grandma herself. While going through some old storage boxes in my apartment, I found a tin envelope tucked inside a stack of cookbooks Grandma had given me a year before she passed. I hadn't touched the box in months, maybe even longer, but I recognized the envelope instantly. Her handwriting, that sharp cursive she never lost, even into her 80s, was addressed to me. Just one word on the front. Anna. My heart dropped. Inside was a folded letter and an old photograph of me sitting beside her in the backyard, maybe age 10, with her arm wrapped around me and both of us smiling. Really smiling. On the back in ink she'd written, "To my favorite girl. The one who always listened." I read the letter. And that's when everything changed. It was dated 6 months before she passed. She must have known the cancer would come back. She must have felt the clock ticking. The letter wasn't long, but every word hit like a lightning bolt. My darling Anna, if you're reading this, then something has gone wrong. I wanted to give this to you directly, but if for some reason I couldn't, I'm leaving it with the books you love so much. The sapphire ring is yours. You know that. I've told you that for years. It was your great-grandmother's, then mine, and now it's meant to be yours. I've also put this in my will, but in case there's interference, or if your mother and sister decide to twist things, I want you to have this letter as proof. You've always been the quiet strength in this family. That's why this ring belongs with you. Not because of tradition, but because you understand what tradition means. I love you endlessly. Grandma Ruth. Asterisk. I sat there stunned. My hands were shaking. She knew. She knew what they were capable of. She knew they'd tried to rewrite it. And she tried to protect me, even after she was gone. But here's the part that shook me the most. She said it was in her will. I hadn't even thought about the will. My parents had handled everything after her death and never said a word about it. There was no reading, no mention of her estate, no division of assets beyond some vague comments about splitting things evenly. I'd assumed she didn't leave much behind. But now I realized they had hidden it. I called the county probate office the next day. I gave them Grandma's full name, date of death, everything. Took a few hours. I was bracing for the worst. Some technicality, some excuse, some dead end. But they confirmed it. Yes, a will had been filed. Yes, you are named. And yes, it included specific instructions regarding the ring. They emailed me a digital copy. And there it was, black and white. The sapphire ring with gold band is to be passed to my granddaughter Anna, last name, as discussed and promised for several years. It was right there. Legal. Binding. Undeniable. And yet, my family never told me. They had seen this document, ignored it, and given the ring to Emily anyway. That wasn't just selfish. That wasn't favoritism. That was fraud. Could barely breathe. It all snapped into place. The vague deflections. The gaslighting. The way my mother insisted I misunderstood Grandma's promise. The way my dad said, not everything has to be about promises. It was all a coordinated lie to erase me from something that was legally and morally mine. They hadn't just stolen the ring. They had knowingly, deliberately, and willfully violated Grandma's final wishes, because they didn't think I'd push back. Because I was the quiet one. 'Cause I always kept the peace. But not this time. This time I had proof. This time I had Grandma's words in ink. This time I had the law on my side. And this time I wasn't going to disappear into silence. I didn't confront them right away. Took a week. I talked to a lawyer. Nothing dramatic, just a consultation. But she confirmed what I already suspected. What they did was legally questionable at best and potentially criminal at worst. At the very least, I had a right to claim the ring and have the estate reviewed. But more than the legal right, I had moral clarity. I wasn't doing this for money. I didn't want to destroy anyone. I just wanted the truth honored. I wanted Grandma's voice to finally be louder than their lies. So I wrote an email. Not to fight. Not to accuse. Just to state facts. I attached a copy of the letter. Copy of the will. A photo of the ring, taken years earlier on Grandma's hand. And I wrote, "Hi all. I found a letter from Grandma, along with a photo and a copy of the will I requested from the county. The documents clearly state that the ring was intended for me. I'm not trying to cause a war. I just want what was promised, and what was rightfully mine. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed. Anna." Simple, measured, and 100% backed by truth. I hit send. Within 2 hours I got a reply from Emily. "Unbelievable. You just had to make this about you. No apology, no shock, no denial. Just deflection and rage, because I disrupted the narrative she had built for herself. The beloved daughter, the chosen one, the rightful heir." Then came my mom's message. "This is very disappointing, Anna. Your grandmother loved all of us. I think you're twisting her words for your own agenda." I replied with one sentence. "Her words are in writing. Yours are not." Radio silence. For 3 days no one said a word. I thought maybe they'd come to their senses. Maybe they were regrouping. But on the 4th day I got a call from my aunt. "Anna, honey, I just want you to know. I saw the will. I always assumed you got the ring. I didn't know they gave it to Emily until it was already done. I'm sorry." And suddenly I knew, the family knew. All of them. They had seen the will. They had known the truth. And they let it happen anyway. Because keeping me in my place was more important than honoring Grandma. That was the twist. It wasn't one person acting alone. It was the whole system. The whole damn family machine working together, whether by action or silence, to preserve a fiction where I was always on the outside. But not anymore. Because Grandma didn't just give me a ring. She gave me a voice. And this time I was going to use it. They didn't respond to my final message. Not with apologies. Not with explanations. Not even with the kind of fake, performative concern I was used to growing up. Just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't come from guilt or confusion, but from retreat. They thought if they ignored me long enough, I'd fall back into my old role. The quiet one. The girl who kept the peace. The one who never made a scene. But this time I had no intention of staying quiet. They had taken something from me. Something sacred, personal, and rooted in years of love and legacy. They violated a promise that didn't just belong to me, but to my grandmother's memory. And now they were trying to brush it all under the rug like it had never happened. They expected me to give up. They didn't realize. I wasn't asking anymore. I gave them the chance to handle it privately. I gave them the chance to do the right thing. And they chose silence. So now, I was going to let everyone else hear the truth they'd buried. I didn't hire a lawyer. I didn't file a lawsuit. What I did was quieter, martyr, and, in the end, way more devastating. It started with a letter to the executor of my grandmother's estate. You see, when a will is filed through probate, it's a public document. And if someone mishandles or ignores its contents, it's not just a moral failure, It's a legal issue. Especially if personal property, like an heirloom ring, is explicitly assigned to a beneficiary and then withheld or redirected. The executor was a longtime family friend. A man I remembered vaguely from church growing up. Kind, always polite, and someone my grandmother had clearly trusted. I explained the situation. Calmly, factually, with copies of both Grandma's handwritten letter and the official will. Within 48 hours I got a call. He was horrified. He hadn't been told about the ring. Hadn't been present when items were distributed. My parents had handled it informally, telling him that all family members had agreed to how things would be split, that no one contested anything, that there was no need to drag out the details. They lied to him too. He apologized profusely, said he wanted to make things right. And then he asked the most important question. Do you want me to speak to your family? Or do you want to? That's when the idea hit me. Well, I didn't want him to speak to them. I wanted him to speak to everyone else. So we drafted a formal notice, a correction of distribution, a document stating that per the will, the ring had been wrongly given to another family member, and that the rightful recipient had requested correction through the proper probate channels. It was neutral, polite, but it was also official. And then I asked him to send it, not just to my parents and Emily, but to every family member listed in the estate as a secondary or residual beneficiary. That included 2 of my aunts, 3 cousins, and a second cousin who was an attorney. They didn't see it coming. The fallout was immediate. I got a phone call from my Aunt Karen within hours. She was livid, not at me but at my mother. Why didn't you tell us there was a ring assigned in the will? You let Emily keep it and said nothing. And that's the thing. My family, dysfunctional as they are, still care deeply about how they're perceived. And now, for the first time, that perception was cracking. They couldn't hide behind private spin anymore. Other people knew. The truth was out. And that terrified them. But the best part, I didn't lift a finger beyond sending the truth. They did the rest themselves. Because when you've built your image on being the good parents or the beloved daughter, the last thing you want is for people to start whispering, to start wondering. And those whispers, they spread fast. Especially in families like mine, where everyone's smiling on the surface but ready to pounce the moment someone else slips. Emily tried damage control. She posted a throwback photo on Facebook, her and Grandma at some birthday party from years ago, captioned, "Missing my best friend today. I hope I'm making you proud." And people commented, but not the usual fluff. One cousin wrote, "I thought Grandma left her ring to Anna. Wasn't that in the will?" Another added, "Weird how things get conveniently forgotten after someone passes." Emily took the post down. 3 days later I got a text from my dad. "Let's talk." I ignored it. He followed up with a voicemail. Sounded tired. Not angry. Not defensive. Just worn out. "Anna." I didn't know the wording in the will was that specific. We thought it was more symbolic. If we made a mistake, we're sorry. Maybe we can fix this without more embarrassment. Embarrassment. That's what it was to them. Not betrayal. Not grief. Just an inconvenience to manage. A story they couldn't control anymore. But I wasn't interested in revenge for revenge's sake. I didn't want to humiliate them. I wanted them to feel what I had felt. That moment of powerlessness when someone you trust takes something sacred from you and pretends it never mattered. So I gave them a choice. I sent one final message. You have 1 week to return the ring. No drama. No confrontation. Just send it to the executor, and let him return it to me per the will. If I don't hear back, I will be taking legal steps. And unlike before, this time there will be court records. Silence again. But 6 days later a package arrived at my door. Inside was a small velvet box. No note. No apology. Just the ring. My ring. It looked exactly as I remembered. The deep blue sapphire catching the light. The delicate band slightly worn from years on Grandma's hand. And when I slipped it on my finger, something shifted inside me. Not vindication. Not triumph. Something quieter. Closure. They couldn't take that from me now, no matter how hard they tried. In the weeks that followed, the family dynamic shifted. I wasn't invited to Easter brunch. No more group text. My mother unfriended me on Facebook. Emily blocked me. And I felt peace. Because sometimes walking away isn't defeat. It's a declaration. A refusal to keep playing by rules you never agreed to. Grandma saw me. She loved me. And she left behind something more powerful than a ring or a letter. She left behind the reminder that quiet love is still love. That showing up matters. That dignity isn't always loud, but it's unshakable. And for the first time in years I finally felt like I belonged. Not in their family, but in my own story. I still wear the ring. Not every day, not like some precious jewel I flaunt, but often enough that I feel her close. Sometimes I'll catch the light bouncing off the sapphire when I'm reaching for my coffee, or typing up a report, or walking past a mirror. And each time it reminds me of her. Of what she saw in me. Of the quiet conversations, the late-night laughter, the recipes written in flour on her countertop. Of a love that never needed to be loud to be real. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after everything explodes. After the drama fades and the dust settles, you're left with the truth. And the truth, once it's finally uncovered, isn't always comforting. It's rarely neat, but it's solid. And for the first time in my life, I'm standing on something that doesn't shake under my feet. This whole ordeal, losing the ring, fighting for it, reclaiming it, was never really about the ring itself. It was about legacy, about memory, about being seen in a family that spent years looking through me. They tried to define me as cold, distant, detached. But that wasn't who I was. It was just the version of me that made it easier for them to ignore what they didn't want to confront. You see, families, especially ones obsessed with appearances, create roles. And once they put you in a box, they expect you to stay in it forever. If you're the quiet one, you're not allowed to speak up. If you're the strong one, you're not allowed to break down. If you're the independent one, then any pain you feel must be self-inflicted. Because you don't need anyone, right? That's the trap. And the twist. The moment you challenge that narrative, the people who said they loved you the most become the ones who hurt you the worst. But here's the thing no one tells you when you finally break out of that box. It's both painful and freeing. Painful because you lose the illusion of the family you wish you had. But freeing because you stop betraying yourself just to fit in. That was my real inheritance. Not the sapphire. Not the will. Not even the validation from the people who once ignored me. It was the clarity to know who I am, with or without their approval. And that clarity came from Grandma. She was the only person in that family who loved me as I was. Not because I was the loudest or the most dramatic or the easiest to manage, but because I was consistent. I showed up. I listened. I loved her with patience, not performance. And in the end, she gave me the one thing the rest of them never could. The feeling of being enough. Not for what I did. Not for what I achieved. But for who I was. That feeling is what I carry now. Not just when I look at the ring, but in the way I carry myself, the boundaries I keep. The silence I no longer allowed to be mistaken for submission. I used to believe that walking away from family was a failure. That cutting ties, even temporarily, meant I'd lost something essential. But I don't believe that anymore. Sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you can do, for yourself. Because love without respect is just manipulation. And loyalty without truth is just control. So if you've ever found yourself in a family where you're constantly asked to shrink, to apologize for existing, to carry burdens in silence while others get praised for simply showing up. Hear me when I say this. You are not the problem. Your boundaries are not betrayal. Your pain is not an overreaction. Your memories are not lies just because someone else refuses to validate them. You get to define your worth. You get to decide what kind of legacy you want to carry forward. And you get to say, enough, even if you have to say it alone. Because real love, honest love, doesn't demand that you stay small. It doesn't erase your truth to protect someone else's comfort. It holds space for your story, even when it's messy. Especially when it's messy. And that's what I wish more people understood. That family isn't just a title. It's a behavior. It's a choice that has to be made every single day. And when people choose power, control, and silence over honesty and care, they forfeit the right to call themselves family. I didn't want to lose mine. I didn't set out to burn bridges. I gave them every chance to do the right thing. But sometimes, keeping the peace means losing yourself. And that's a price I'm no longer willing to pay. What I did gain, though, is something deeper. I gained a sense of self I didn't have before. I gained the strength to stop explaining my pain to people who are committed to misunderstanding me. I gained the freedom to grieve the family I wish I had while still honoring the one person who never made me feel invisible. And I gained this story. A story that I hope maybe someone out there needed to hear today. Because if you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel like your love didn't count because it wasn't loud enough, if you've ever been cast aside in favor of someone who knew how to perform better, if you've ever been told you never really cared, simply because you didn't play by their rules, then I want you to know you're not alone. You are not unlovable. You are not too quiet. You are not too distant. You are whole. You are worthy. And you are allowed to choose yourself, even when it hurts. As for me, I don't talk to them anymore. And no, I don't miss the group texts or the family dinners or the forced smiles at holidays. What I miss is the version of them I used to hope existed. The version that saw me, heard me, valued me. But that version never showed up. So now I show up for myself. And that ring, it sits on my finger as a daily reminder, not of what they took, but of what they couldn't. Because Grandma knew something they didn't. She knew that the strongest love is often the quietest. That the most loyal hearts are the ones that get overlooked until it's too late. That real legacy doesn't glitter, it grounds you. And that sometimes the most powerful heirlooms aren't things passed down, but truths passed on. I'll carry that truth with me always. And if it speaks to you too, then maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just my story, it's ours. So, after everything, after the betrayal, the lies, the silence, the rediscovery of Grandma's letter, and the long journey to reclaim what was rightfully mine, I'm left with more than just a ring. I'm left with a deeper understanding of how families work, how people hide behind traditions to excuse their choices, and how, sometimes, the quietest love is the most powerful. And if you felt anything while listening to this story, if your heart ached, if your hands clenched, if you thought, this could have been me, then I want to ask you something, just one thing before we go. Don't let this story stop here. Because this isn't just my story. This kind of thing happens more than we like to admit. Inheritance disputes, emotional manipulation, sibling favoritism, gaslighting masked as family dynamics. And most of the time people keep it to themselves. They bury it deep. They carry the weight in silence, thinking no one else would understand. But we do. You do. You do. And the only way we start healing from these stories is by talking about them. That's what Judgy Tales is all about. Every story on this channel is a real moment pulled from the chaos of life. It's not sugar-coated. It's not always pretty. But it's real. And maybe, just maybe, there's something powerful in simply listening, judging with honesty, and asking the question no one else is brave enough to ask. What would I do if this happened to me? So if you found value in this story, if it made you feel seen, validated, angry, or even a little more hopeful, then I'd love for you to become part of this community. All it takes is a quick click. Backhand index pointing right like this video, because engagement helps others who need this story find it. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe to Judgy Tales, so you never miss the next real-life drama that hits a little too close to home. Backhand index pointing right, tap that notification bell, because these stories drop weekly, and trust me, the twists we have coming will leave you stunned, emotional, and sometimes ready to throw your phone. But more than that, share your thoughts. This space isn't just a one-way story time. It's a conversation. Leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever been the quiet one in your family? Have you ever lost something you were promised, only to be told it was your fault for not being louder? Have you ever had to choose yourself, even when it meant walking away? Your voice matters here. And you never know, your comment might just be the thing that makes someone else feel a little less alone. This channel isn't just about stories. It's about justice, the twisted, messy humankind. It's about reclaiming the narrative. And it's about reminding people that your pain doesn't have to stay quiet just because it makes someone else uncomfortable. So if you've made it this far, thank you. Truly. For listening. For feeling. For judging. For being brave enough to sit with a complicated story instead of scrolling past. And I hope you'll stay. Because we have so much more to uncover together. This has been Judgy Tales, where the stories are real, the drama is raw, and the justice, well, let's just say it doesn't always come from the court. Sometimes it comes from you. Ear listen. Balance scale judge. Beach balloon share your thoughts. And I'll see you in the next one.